Status on orchard 1. What did we do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No PR to be merged. I saw one, so Thursday we should have a merge PR. Orchard core. What happened? Too much, probably. So checking out the dev branch, the red line, and the orange here. So we are looking for we are the 19, so we're looking for the 12 here. On dev branch, so that should be it. Adds types for validation and fixing sparse settings updating. I think we already saw that. Yeah, nothing special here. Removing an await, which is weird. I don't get it. How? How is that better? I missed something here. It's like it's the opposite color. Let me check. I want to be sure. What? Pools. That's not how it works. Issues and that. It's not what I'm seeing. Here. Is it a dev branch? It is a dev branch. Then I don't understand. Oh no, these are okay. Lots of changes here. Okay, so maybe there is another file. So lots of changes here. I didn't see. And then this one, I don't get it. It's async and it doesn't want to call it async currently. Why? Okay, then Jean-Thierry will watch the video and tell us why it's done this way. There is no reason. Okay. Weird. Trumbowyg jQuery dependency by Antoine, adding a jQuery dependency on Trumbowyg because it needs one. Update readme from Nemanja, removing the requires 2017 because it actually requires 2019. Because netcore 3, try add without validation instead of add to other providers because some other, yeah, we talked about it last week. That's why I didn't see the other issue. Allow for overriding the property name used for a section in display driver is just an extensibility. Explain the scenario, it made sense. So instead of hard coding it to the type name of the section you want to create, it will be the default, but you can also override this by assigning a property name if you create sections, which are ways to render the editor of an entity for a specific section of this entity. This is what we do for site settings, for instance, where you have different screens like for search settings, for user settings, but you are still editing the same site setting entity. So this, then two little async tweaks. Okay, good one. Oh yeah, okay, good, this one is correct. And then fixing a lock, well, now it's async. Okay, why? Oh, because this one is async now. Okay, okay, docs add missing array bracket. Okay, fixing the docs. OpenId reduce index table name length by Jean-Philippe. OpenID app index provider. So changing the class names because it's used in the indices automatically. Is it because of that? Yeah, that's sad. It's not because we are using name of that you have to change the class name. If you think this thing is too long, then we should just not use the class name. I think that's a bad change.
Well, it's a good change because we got errors on the long names.
Okay,
when using table prefixes.
So you didn't understand what I said. I didn't say that we should not fix the issue. I said that the fix itself is the bad fix. What he did is that he changed the name of the class because he was using the class name, you see, name of the class name as the string. And if the string is too long, it's not because the class name is too long. I mean, then just don't use the class name. Just give it a string. So here we had to change the class name to make it like less readable, like OpenID app, you know, instead of application. I mean, it's just a class name. It happened that we used the name here in this case. You see here we use the name of the class name maybe for the table, but no, I mean, it doesn't have to be this way. And in this case, actually it's just for the property. So the property is the same. So there must be, yes, here. Name of, you see here, no, just don't reduce the class name, just stop using name of.
String,
and then we don't have to change the class. That's the reason. So yes, I agree with we should fix it. And yeah, okay. But here it's a breaking change for, yeah, it's a breaking change. It's not really breaking in this case because we don't use a class directly, but it's kind of sad that we have to rename the file and no, just not even the file, maybe just a class name. I don't know. Yeah, just a class name, not the file. But we don't need to change the file. Just don't use the name of in this case.
Yep.
Okay. And there might be some things to do more automatically so that yeah, so I thought that it would be YesSql that actually creates the name, but no, it's not. So yeah, it's about, we could add validation at least to be sure that we don't have the issue anymore. But it's us that create the name directly, so we should be just more careful about what names we use here.
Yeah, because they're pretty long. Yeah? Because if you have a prefix in front of the then you get errors very quickly.
For the prefix, we might want to use a hash that is constant to the name. This way maybe we could ensure that it will always be of a specific size. And yep, okay. So it's mitigation so far, but it's not fixing it.
Not the fix you want. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I would have liked another mitigation, but the actual fix will be that you can't, even if you type a long string, you can't mess up with that. So like validating the size here and also having the variable part, which is before that, using the prefix, to be a constant size with a hash. That will be the real fix. But that will unblock everyone for now, this one. here. So this one, replace IAsyncViewResultFilter to IAsyncViewActionFilter. I explained it in the PR. I don't remember why, but it makes sense. And the change is easy. So good. Trumbowyg media modal and insert media URL. So now there is a new button that lets you inject an image tag instead of a liquid small script to inject the URL. And there are the two because it's called the tag feature. There are two of them because by default it's using a liquid tag to inject the media, such that if you are if you deploy in a different tenant or a different URL or whatever in production, then you won't lose. It will generate automatically the good URL when the page is rendered. But if you don't like it because you don't see the image and you still know that you won't have a different prefix on your production, then you can use a tag, an image tag with the actual absolute URL of the media. Up to you. And I was thinking, Antoine, even better, because people want tags to be able to see the image in the editor. Maybe it would be nice to have a custom plugin that will detect the liquid tag or any other tag. If it's, yeah, it would be better if it was liquid, but that will detect the liquid tag and render the image instead dynamically in the editor, so that it's still the liquid tag, but when you look at the source, but when you see it as WYSIWYG, it will actually use the actual image. That would be nice. I'm not sure it's doable, but that would be super fun.
You can use the preview, content preview.
Well, you can always use a preview, but what you're trying to fix here is that they can see it without the content preview in the WYSIWYG.
Mm-hmm.
And if you resize the image, then it applies the resize property to the liquid tag. So add view button to media app grid and field container. The issue it fixed was different, well, had a different name, I think. Like something was broken. Where is? I closed it. Fixes that. Media app always adds a new query string to URL. Okay, that was, yeah, the media app always happens exclamation point, not exclamation point, question mark to the query string when building resize thumbnail. And this is just a fix. JavaScript, yeah, it was always adding data issue, that's the issue. Now you are checking if it's there. Okay. Or actually, there are actually a new button. Download button. Well, view.
Yeah, so it fixed the query string issue, plus also added a view button, which we had somewhere else in the media app, but not on the grid and not on the container.
Okay. Cool. Handle exception while cleaning temporary media folder. So exception when cleaning a media folder, because it happens. Okay, better error handling, I assume in this case. Don't forget about the way you see here, injecting a string with 0 instead of using the name of the parameter here. That's how it works, not using 0 but name, because it's logging, it's specific, and not using $. Tenants new UI with the new header, with all the bulk actions and filters and paging. And new namespaces. This is the view import, so that's okay. Yeah, I saw that many times. I was wondering if we actually needed to add some extensions or properties on the pager itself. Because I saw that now, I see that you're doing it everywhere, so maybe it's required. Well, maybe it will be better if we add it by default. Prevent connection reset exception on select content type change. JavaScript fix, and apparently 2 people validated the fix. So we assume that Antoine agrees with the fix. Updating YesSql because what was the bug? It was a bad bug. I fixed it quickly. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, something about the caching with the you set item and.
Sorry, what did you say? Immutable.
Yeah, you changed how you did the immutable collections.
Yeah, there was okay, concurrency issues. Yeah, race issue. Okay, and actually I found more of that while I was fixing the issue. I found more. Yeah, something like when someone tries to access the ID, a cache, it will say, oh, the item is already there because it was doing an add. And 2 concurrent accesses on this same code path could call add at the same time. So they will both go into the say, no, it doesn't exist, and they will both try to add it. And that's wrong. And Jean-Thierry said, okay, just use set item, which he was right. But it was worse than that because some of the usage was not reassigning the immutable array back to its property because it returns a new array, a new collection. So we have to reset. So which one? So some of them will not work actually. Like this one, you see here, compile queries.add. I mean, it will do that all the time because it's just creating a new collection with a new item, but we don't reuse this new item. So the next time we go to this code, it will still add it and add it and add it and add it again. So this was wrong. We need to catch the return object. Same thing here. It was not catching it back. So that's super wrong. I assume when we move to immutable array, immutable dictionary, it was not done correctly. So now it's fixed, and also other bugs that we know about. Spelling error should be something and not something. Should be okay, and don't. Okay, that's the issue. Hello script style tag helper to add dependencies from Dean. Very specific dependencies where they are not ordered correctly because they don't know about the dependency. So now we can add a dependency on a resource. On what kind of resource? On we will never know.
It's on a resource that's been registered via a resource manifest.
Okay, and it was handled already in Orchard 1, so I assume I missed it when I migrated it to Orchard Core, or maybe I thought it was not necessary and everything was working, so I was like, yeah, it works. With comments. Awesome. Thank you. This could have been a static array, but I'm like, this code should not be executed all the time, so it was okay. But usually it's even better. I don't do that all the time either, so it's even better if we put them static. It depends on how often we go into this code. In this case, that's okay. Fix typo. Hierarchy. Google Analytics admin menu was not using the correct admin menu. Workflow improvements, because it needs to be improved. This one was interesting. So I made the workflow module in Orchard 1, and Sipke made it in Orchard Core. But I completely...
Yeah. Everyone thinks that I created both. Well, not everyone, but some people.
Well, no, I don't know who thinks. People think you mean... No, people think correctly that you made the one in Orchard Core, because you did. And I don't remember exactly how it was done in Orchard 1, but I
remember exactly. I studied it deeply. It was really nice.
But I trusted Sipke when he did that, so I'm like, yeah, he did the same thing. And so I assume it's still the same thing. And there was a user who had an issue. They wanted to do a workflow that would delete a content item after a specific time. And that resonated because last week we kind of designed how to create scheduled tasks to archive and publish later content items. And actually I didn't remember that Sipke had done the timer activity. And this user who wanted to unpublish said, oh, okay, I want to use the timer activity. And I'm like, what is that? And I wanted to look into that to see how we could do actually the scheduled task without a scheduled task module. Could we do everything in workflow? Then we can. So I tried to find what was the issue by implementing this workflow. So the workflow I tried to do was like on a scheduled event, like every minute, because we can't go smaller, but it was fine to trigger an event every minute. Oh yes, so it was two tricks here. So on a scheduled event, do a query, a SQL query, for instance, and with all the results of the SQL query, unpublish these items or delete these items. I tried with just unpublish because I didn't care about deleting them. I just wanted to unpublish to see if it was working, and I could do it again and again. And that's super interesting because the power of that, like you create a timer and you define the schedule using a cron string, a cron job string, and a cron tab is called cron string. Okay, and then so I made that, and then the next item is executing a SQL query. How do you execute a SQL query in the workflow? Well, you have to use a script task, which lets you execute JavaScript. And then from the result of this script task, which returns a list of content items, you can send it to an unpublish activity. And there were issues in every single activity I tried to use. But bugs or small things, small details. The first one, and I haven't fixed it yet, and probably someone will do it. The first one, before the first one I will explain. So first I tried to drag and drop. I tried to drag and drop a task, like a script task, and I could set it as a startup task. I don't know how you call it now. I could mark it as starting up the workflow, startup task, let's say that. But it was a task, not an event. And later on, if you look at the documentation for the workflows, it tells you that you can only set events as startup activities. But the UI lets you define a task as a startup activity. I think that's an issue. We should not allow an activity to be a startup task, because people will click on the startup button and will be confused. That was the first thing that confused me. You never find more bugs and issues than when you try a feature by yourself without knowing anything about it. This way, or when you do a demo. You do a demo, you're like, yeah, I get why people don't understand how to do it, because you are facing about trying to explain that and you can't explain it. So like, okay, well, there's an issue here. So same thing, I try to use it. I'm like, okay, I see the confusion. So first, I think, so someone is taking notes and file issues, so we can fix them later. So first, we can set a task as a starting activity, which is wrong because you can't. it won't do anything. So we should not even try to show it, right, Sipke? I think there is a reason.
Yeah, there's a reason I allowed for the for workflows to start without starting with a trigger or an event. But that's for more advanced scenarios where you have custom applications where you actually want to invoke a workflow as if it were a function. Anyway, that was the rationale. So, within the context, also just from a user's perspective, I agree it doesn't make sense, but...
it's okay. I don't disagree with that then. But then why do... Okay, so it's like when you trigger it manually, it will start from an activity from a task. Okay, I see. So if I have an endpoint, a webhook, exactly. I can trigger it.
Yeah, and I remembered another use case was the forms module, where you can build up a form using the widgets and the flow part. And at some point, the idea was that you would be able to associate a form with a workflow that you would want to execute. And of course, it could be triggered by listening for a form submitted event. But since you are binding this workflow definition to a given form anyways, you might just as well start or invoke that workflow without...
That makes sense. So it makes sense to be able to select a task or an event. I agree. Then we should fix the documentation and say that in some...
Yeah, that is important because I got a question from someone that, why doesn't my workflow start? Because, I marked it as a starting activity, but it's not starting.
Yeah, so the documentation should be clear that if you select an activity, it won't start by itself. You will need a trigger that knows how to start it. And okay. So that was my first comment. So there is a discrepancy between what you can do and what the documentation says that you should do. Well, that's what you can do also. Good. Then the second point, I put my timer activity and it tells me to enter a cron string. And I know what a cron string is, but I'm sure 50% of the people don't know what a cron string is. And then among the ones who know, 90% doesn't know what to type. So the only thing we need is a link under the string to any site that gives you an example on how to write things.
Specifically, I would use crontab Guru.
This one, for instance, only thing. Yeah, that's the first thing I wanted because I know it's there. I know what a cron string is, but I had to Google it again. So if you had just a link to that, that would be awesome. But least you agree.
I could not get to get my cron strings accepted by Orchard Core.
Oh, that's weird. I tried it works, so maybe you use a weird one. I don't know which one you use, but
I just Googled an example and I tried to plug it in and it said no.
So the link would be useful.
Yeah, it's true. There's different formats or different number of characters that you can add.
Okay.
And the only one that I ever got to work was the one from crontab.
So link to it and also an example with the most obvious one, like a 5 minutes one, where you see 5 and you know that when you want to do 1 minute, then you will do 1 because that's the obvious one every minute or something. Okay, at least if we have to give an example, that will be something like that.
Yep.
But so this was a minor issue. Then I paste my timer and then I point to a script task because I want to execute a query. So I know I remembered that it was documented, so I went on the documentation here, and I found it quite easily. So if I typed workflow, well, it's cheating because maybe it remembers what I was doing. Workflows, okay, and workflows. And then at some point, there is a table with all the methods, and I know that Dean updated it recently because it was missing some of the global methods. And I found, so liquid expressions, activities, developing custom activities, I missed it. JavaScript functions. So it's not there actually, right? It's there. No, it's not there. It's not there, but I went on the queries module probably. Core module. CMS module. MySql. Crap. It's somewhere. But I think it's somewhere else also. Whatever, it's documented, so we can find it somehow. So execute query, this is what I want to use. Antoine, is there a way we can force something to not be 2 lines? There must be a tag to say don't break the word. So for the keywords, that would be interesting here. Returns the results of a query, name, parameters, and this was fine. And then I figured that I could just pass, because I was in JavaScript in this case, curly braces to pass an empty object, and it worked. And then when you do that, it returns an IEnumerable, and then I was like, how do you give it to the next task? Because I want this result to be given to the next task. And I looked at the code, and without you explaining, I would have been I was confused, because there is an input and output property in the task, and I was like, great. Input is what gets into the task. Output is what I give back for the next task, for its next input. And also it was a reflex for me, because that's how liquid filters work. We have an input and we have also output, so we can pipe things like in a pipeline or workflow with a single line. But no, when I explained that on the chat, you say, nope, that's not what it is. This is the input and the output for the whole workflow. The input of the workflow and the output of the workflow, not individual tasks. We have access to it from the workflow context, but this is not what I thought it was. And you said the only thing to do is to use the last result. So you can say set the last result property of the workflow context, such that you can reuse this value in the next element. And another possibility is to assign a custom property on the workflow context with a name one which is a global to the workflow instance, and then reuse that. And both solutions work for me. It's kind of sad that we don't have the notion of input and output for the task itself. That would have made it easier. At the same time, maybe it's not possible because we might have different. No, we always have one output, and an output could be an object, and then you can pass a complex object if you want different properties. And even if we have 2 different outcomes, like done and fail and whatever you want, there is still one outcome that is done, so it could still be the output. So I think we could have an input and an output property for a task. That should not be hard either.
No, that should be very doable, and I totally agree that that's how it should have been. The last result, it was a quick workaround to at least have something as output, but it's not elegant.
It's like a property. Last result is like a global property, hardcoded property, because
exactly. But it's also always overwritten by the next activity if that sets the last result. And ideally, an activity would not just yield an outcome and then automatically be provided to the next activity as input.
And we could even store the state.
Yes, you should be able to access a given activity's output from any other activity's expression. At least this is what I see in other workflow tools, and it's very useful. For example, let's say you have the start of the workflow starts with an HTTP request activity. Maybe from some other activity down the line, you will want to access the model that was bound, or the form that was bound against some model that you persist as.
I will make it opt-in, however, to persist the state of the input-output of the activities, because that could be big and you might not want to store that, or you might not, or you might want to not store any information like this because it might be like data sensitive, like passwords or personal information, so you might not want to do that. So that could be a common property on the task to say store state, so that when you store the workflow, you also store the state of each activity, like the input-output. But yes, input-output will make sense. And then we could remove the last result. So what in the end, when I figured out it was not that, as you explained, I use last results. And so last result does its job. But for the script activity, what is not nice is that if it's a function, and if I return something from this function, you don't have to return anything. But if I return, because I'm like, it's a script, so I have inputs, and I want to return something, the list of content items for the next activity. So I was expecting that calling return my content items or return execute query with the name of the query, it will pass this value to the next one as the input. So I was wrong, but then I realized it was actually last result. So what I did in this PR, and this is where so what I did in this PR is the script activity, I changed it to assign automatically the last result. Actually, I'm breaking stuff here. I should not do that. Yeah, so this PR is breaking stuff. You proved it, but you didn't realize that I'm breaking everything.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was about to ask, isn't the script activity supposed to return the outcomes?
No. This is wrong. Because the trick activity has a set outcome property, and that's documented in the task. You say call it at least once. Set outcome done. And this is the default value actually. When you did the script, it says set outcome done. And it gives you a done outcome. First comment is that, well, we could just do that by default. If set outcome hasn't been set, then just pick the first outcome of the list and then we set it. This way we are sure to have an outcome, and we don't have to, because this most of the time with the script activity, it will be done. There will be one state, and this is why there is a default. Sorry, one outcome done, and this is why it is a default in the editor. So I mean, we could also default to say, even if you write nothing for the outcome, we will set it to done, because there is just one. If there are two, we might fail. Hey, you didn't call set outcome, and there are two outcomes, we need to be called. But I will not even call it. Then the issue here is that, so what I change is the result of the function, just set it as the last result so that the next task can just look at the last result property and it will be there all the time. And if you don't say anything, then the last result is nothing because you didn't return anything. But what I'm breaking here is that if you were calling the last result function inside the script because you wanted that actually, then I'm breaking it because now I'm overwriting the value with the result of the function. So this line that I change breaks some scripts. I think I should fix it and check that if this is the same value as before we execute, then I mean it hasn't been set, so I can set it, otherwise I should not set it, because it means the script set the value. And that's why it would be interesting to have an input-output, because there will be no ambiguity. The output is the result of that. And if you want to pass a custom property with a name, then you use the property names. And then you can't access, yeah, so that should be, or you call set input, set output from the script, or set output from the script if you don't want to return something. But I think we should just use the return option. That's the easiest thing, like return one. After all, a script task that calls return one should be in the input of the next task.
Yeah.
That should be the obvious one. Yeah. Okay. But here I broke something. I should try to fix that. I did some optimizations. I saw them, nothing interesting. And this one also, this one, yeah, because what is the content activity? So any content activity. So once all the content items were passed to the last result, I wanted the content activity to unpublish them. So the content activity lets you write an expression that will be evaluated to do something on the list. You pass the accessor to the list. And what I saw is that for any item, you will try to serialize, deserialize the thing. You will serialize the object and deserialize it to get a content item. So I did an optimization, which is, well, if the result is a content item, you can just use it. You don't have to serialize and deserialize it, because that's what you will get all the time usually. Another thing that we could improve is that we could accept content item IDs, so that a task will send to it a list of content item IDs, and this method here in the content activity will find, or through an option, will know that it has to load the content item to do something on it, because it's an ID. Might be easier also than just loading all the content items from the previous scripts. You might just flow an ID. And if it was already loaded, it will be no up, because loading by content item ID when the content item has already been loaded in the previous task will take it from the cache. So we could just work with IDs. So just feedback from what I saw, and then everything was working. Beautiful. Every minute I will publish my post and it will unpublish them. That might be a nice guide actually to implement. Also that I saw, so I was editing the unpublished activity, and it was saying example input content, because the default property that is set when you have an event which is content has been created will set the content item in a content property. That's what you say. So you give the example to consume that. And actually I looked at the code and it actually content item. So I changed the text to say no, use content item and not content, because this is where it's set actually. So this was misleading. I also removed the example input content, because without context it doesn't make any sense. I don't know what input content means, what input does. I just say if no expression is specified, the workflow content item input variable or content item property will be used.
Yeah, and what you see there as the input content, that's an example expression that you would use if you or something else triggered the workflow event with a different input variable named other than content item, which is the correct name as you mentioned. But yeah, the idea was to convey that you can use the input function to access input from that was provided to the workflow from an event. But I agree with the change. It's much more.
And yeah, but at the same time,
it's confusing.
If it's that, then you don't need to write anything, because it will be done by default. So it's just if you want to do something else, that you need to know about that. So that was confusing.
Which is not often. That might be 1% of the cases, and for that there's the documentation with all of the functions.
And then I fixed the other views when I found that it was using the content property, it's content item. But that's because code evolves and documentation doesn't follow. Okay, so that's it for the feedback. So yeah, if we could have input output on every task, I think that would be great. Greater than having input output for the workflow itself. Less meaningful.
Yeah, because that's only actually useful if from an application's point of view, or if you have a execute workflow activity or something like that, then you will be interested in the output.
Yep, because it's like a task itself. A workflow is like a task. It has input, output, it has stuff. It's just made of other workflow tasks which have the same property. So that's why input output makes sense in both.
Yeah, otherwise it wouldn't even work. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. That's all the feedback I have for that. Crontab Guru, is that the one I usually use? Yes, that's the one I use also usually. Because as you type, gives you one more. No, it's wrong. Minute. I can't even type.
Use spaces.
Oh, thank you. Language, I need to use spaces. At minute 1, and to say any minute. No, at
/1, I believe.
There is something with a slash, but what is that?
Yeah, maybe asterisk /1.
Every minute, exactly what I want. So yes, you see, if we have an example like this that says, oh no, this is different. This is the 5th. No, that's okay. That's that. Every 5 minutes, then people are like, oh no, I want it every 10 minutes. So they will just, even without looking at the site, they will do that.
But
Yeah.
can't we just steal this and put it into the editor?
Ah, yeah, next step. But right now it's just a link, which is easier to maintain because we don't have to maintain.
Yeah, that's true. Less code you have to maintain, the better.
But maybe, there could be a text box with a custom thing that will let us type things. But people would also like to see it's easy for us because it can be the serialized value, but ideally you could have an editor where you check the days and the minutes and everything, like the task scheduler in Windows. That's even better, okay? And it could store it as a cron string. That could be an extension.
Yeah, that would be better, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Because this is like writing regular expression.
Yeah. I never remember how to write things. At least I would be happy if I have this example and I could just change 5 to whatever I want. Every hour, well, 60 minutes, boom.
No.
24
that's no. Yeah. That's the next star, right?
You see? No, I'm cheating. That's how I work.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Going on, fixing links in the documentation. Yep. Tenants creations, thread safety. Jean-Thierry found the reason why some unit tests were flaky because the functional test will create tenants concurrently, and he fixed it, so that's good. I don't know where I did that actually. So many changes unrelated to this. Here, new lock, and making everything async here. Then last thing we merged. Oh, we need to go on the red branch now. Update SQL query source, fixing an issue because a transaction was not passed in the call to Dapper. And working on admin menu selection because sometimes the wrong menu item will be selected for super complex reasons, and that's a pain, but that's how it has to work. So I trust Jean-Thierry that it works, and Dean because he tried it also and said it was fixing it. Sometimes I don't want to look at the code because it gets so complicated. I don't want to look. And that's it. Lots of PR from Antoine to update the UI. And also Jean-Thierry updating Antoine's PR about tenant workflow activities. We'll see when it's done. Now we can even create tenants automatically every minute if we want. Awesome. Can do everything with workflows. Super useful. Or we can delete them well, I assume Antoine's goal is to be able to disable them after a week, right? That's exactly scenario for tryorchard.net, tryorchardproject.net. So that, this one interesting or not? What was the reason of that? Yeah, because some chars like Greek, Cyrillic, Arabic are HTML encoded by default with ASP.NET MVC core, where it's not required all the time. So the idea is that instead of using the default encoder, this is a bad example, instead of using the default encoder in everywhere we do liquid, we should use the encoder defined for ASP.NET, and also the encoder defined for ASP.NET should be configured to accept that, which I think we did by default, or at least you can do it if you want. So that's it. Demos. Who has demos? Dean, do you have demos?
Yeah, I could probably do a demo of something.
I want to see who has demos first, because we have to pick which demo. Next time. Thank you. So Dean, you win.
Okay. What would you like to see?
Oh, okay. What demos do you have? Because I know I would have also have loved to see Jean-Philippe, but he can't join us at that time. So sad. So what do you have? What do you have?
So I've got some tags for the taxonomy
Yeah.
stuff.
Also.
Pretty cool. I've got sitemaps, number 3, I think.
Ooh.
And I think you wanted to see a demo of the headless recipe.
Oh crap! My God.
But you know, I have them next week as well. So
Okay, good. Let's start with. So sitemap we've seen that many times.
yeah.
But it will be different again because of me, because I'm a pain. Headless. Okay, tags is the best. Okay, let's do tags and the 2 others next week. Thank you. You can share.
Okay. Let me just change branches, and I'll start sharing.
Because yeah, you've got feedback for sitemaps and it's done now. You've got feedback for headless, but you haven't got any feedback for tags. So we will give feedback now. And,
Yeah,
and Bertrand is here. Bertrand, is it you, Bertrand? Bertrand from Bertrand or not Bertrand that we know? Because you're a guest, you're not Microsoft. That's weird. We don't know. Oh, but you are using some weird client, and last time we had issues. Ah.
What?
No, that's you. I was wondering who Bertrand was, because usually you're in the presenter list. So, and we can see your screen. It's super small, like you have a 60 inches screen, but can you fix that?
Yeah, let me see if I can.
Well, we just need to watch the Chrome or any browser you are using, Chrome, so you can just zoom in Chrome and that will be fine.
I'll just drop the display size down. I had it down before, but it's gone back up again.
Taking risks. Taking risks. It works, it's magic. Okay, you're lucky.
Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't.
It works. It worked for us. Nah, now it's small. I know, wait. It's weird. Whatever, no, just zoom in Chrome because it won't work.
Sorry, this will have to build. It's different branches.
So about the tags, so we don't have a tags module. Ara and the Cloud Construct devs have been working on a tags module that is on GitHub, but that is not using taxonomies. And decision had been made that we wanted a tags module that will use taxonomies. So they made one that was not using taxonomies because it was much easier for them to do, and they needed that. So they could not wait for that. Then the design about using taxonomy was to create a custom editor for taxonomy that will just reflect something like a tags editor, but store the taxonomy terms as any other taxonomy field. That was the design decision we made. There are pros and cons for both solutions, using taxonomies and not using taxonomies. A pro for using taxonomies is reusing what we have. A con might be performance because we store term IDs instead of storing the data, but there are ways to optimize that by also storing maybe the data we want, like we will do with a tag. So we'll see what you have done.
Yeah, so since this is still building and going to take a little while because it's decided to to do that. Yeah, so what I have done is a tags editor based off taxonomies. So you're able to create a terms part and add tags to it. And it all works rather nicely and without too much code, to be honest. The only kind of big design choice is about how to add new tags. Because you can add new tags in the JavaScript editor.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, two options with when you're tagging, you might want just to be able to select tags, existing tags, or you might want an open taxonomy, even without tagging. But you might want an open taxonomy where what you type is added as a taxonomy term automatically in the if you have the correct permissions. And that's what people do when they do tagging for a blog. They want to be able to type text and it will be added automatically. Or maybe they don't want, and then it's an option that should be on the field itself.
Yeah, so the option is there on the taxonomy field already for open, but I don't think we've implemented it anywhere.
Nope, it's just made the checkbox.
Yeah, just made the checkbox. And of course, the reason that it hasn't been is because with terms they are a content item.
Yeah,
you can have more than just a title on them. So if you have a tag, you would probably have a title property or the display text.
Well, now it has, so there is a display text, so we could just use that by default.
Just use that. So it's very easy to create a tag on the fly, but if somebody has added another part to
maybe we can just support that for this editor, like done. Because we know it's a tag, then just assign the display text and assume that it will work.
Yeah, and it is totally possible to do that.
And then if it doesn't work, I mean, then don't check the box, because if you think that just typing a text, well, when I say if the dev thinks that just typing a text should not be sufficient to create a tag because it requires more metadata, then the dev should just say no, then don't create dynamic tags, because it's not just about a single text, it's more things. So don't use this option. So we should just say that if the checkbox is checked, let's assume that only a display text is required and nothing else.
Easy. And the only other kind of choice as to whether to do that creation of the term just via an Ajax call during the editor, or whether you post back to the driver.
To a controller that is, yeah, I'm not even sure you need to call the, you need to call the drivers probably, or the update method. You just need to call the update async method on the content manager, but from a controller that is in the taxonomy and not the content controller, because we might want to apply different securities.
Yeah, and it has to get the main.
Yeah, but the feature will,
Whatever, yeah.
Just to please SqlQuery, we could even make a workflow, but we won't do that.
Well, we could probably trigger it.
Yeah, technically that's what we should do, but no, we don't want to depend on the fact that there is workflow just to.
I mean, maybe you create the content item with the display text, and then
whatever. Yeah, you create a content item. Yeah, you create a content item with display text, and then you can trigger a workflow event. Yeah, totally.
Could work.
Exactly. Just create an event when a tag is created, then boom, do that. Even better.
Yeah, and the other option was whether or not because tags normally you have like a global kind of site collection of tags. So whether or not we kind of create some kind of site tags collection to start off with, or if you just about to have many and you create them yourself.
If we have a tags feature, maybe we could create a tags taxonomy when the feature is enabled, but at the same time, the recipe can handle that. Like when we create the blog recipe, we create a tags taxonomy and we create the fields and we link the blog post to it, and that will be fine. As long as there is a guide explaining how to use tags, how to create tags taxonomies, That's fine. I will not try to create one by default, unless we had a feature called tags, and then we enable the tags feature, but then when we disable it, we need also to clean it. So I'm fine with just handling that in the blogs recipe, and then leave it empty leave it with nothing for the rest, as long as we have a guide to explain how to build tags for anything. No simple guide that says, okay, how to add tags to content items. Well, enable the taxonomy, create a tags taxonomy, and done. Simple guide. So we can see your Chrome. You will do Control++++.
We'll do a lot of Control+++.
Not that many. Chantieri will love lots of Control++, but okay, that's fine.
Okay, so what I've made in here already, hopefully, if this is the right site, is a taxonomy called site tags.
And you can see how it's using the new toolbar from Antoine, the new menu from Antoine.
Yeah, the new menu is great, especially down the side here. I just have to remember where it is now.
Yeah, now my only concern, and when I was working on the workflow I was talking about, I was looking for the queries. I couldn't find the queries. And then I realized, oh, search, crap, we talked about it last week. And exactly what happened to me, I said will happen to everyone, it happened to me. I couldn't find queries, they are in search. So the search is, I don't know, we need to give it another name, or because for me it's just search, it's just full text search. That's what I see. When I see search, that's what I see. So that's not what it is. It's more querying than search or something like that. But okay, feedback.
That makes sense to me. But
taxonomy.
Taxonomies. So what I've done here, and I was just experimenting to see what would happen, or how you could use the tag editor for leafs as well. So I have a taxonomy here, which has just got some tags on them. Another one has just got a title part on it. So basically just display text. And then when we go into the content definition for a blog post, we just have, so I've got a couple of fields on here, one for just selecting a single tag, one for selecting multiples, and one for a regular taxonomy, just so you can kind of see the differences. But on the tags field, we just select a different editor. Which is the tags editor. Everything is super slow today. Always when you're doing demos. So we select the tags editor, and then we can go to one of the posts. And we have our new tags editor. So you can see the ones that are selected already, add new ones. If you start typing, we have a method here to be able to create the tag, which, as I said, does nothing at the moment, but is very easy to wire up to do something. To set the display text is very simple. And then when we save that, it will save the new tags.
Do you do any kind of rendering?
I haven't done any rendering on this one at the moment, but this will just render with the taxonomy.
Okay. Unless we also create a custom display. How do we call that? Display, not display it or display method, whatever.
Yeah, there is an option to do a display method as well. But I looked at the existing terms display.
That's okay.
It really looked quite suitable to start off with. But we can have a custom editor option as well, so you can have different overrides.
Is there a way? I wasn't able to do that last time I tried for the media field to add an alternate text automatically. Maybe we need to look at it again. Is there a way to store the display text in this custom editor field, like as a separate metadata on the field itself, such that it's not in the contract that a taxonomy field has the display text of the term IDs it's pointing to, but in this case we could still store it so that if we know it's a tag, then we could just access the property, the content property of the display text.
So you mean in addition to storing the
Yes.
term ID?
Yes. So the driver itself will store the term IDs, okay? But we could have another driver that detects it's a tag field or a tags editor, and then also store the display text as another property.
Yeah, we could. That wouldn't be particularly hard.
We could also do it also for every taxonomy, just as non-reliable data, but that could
As
be useful.
available data. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could. Yeah, it wouldn't be hard to do an update.
But for tags, it makes sense. For taxonomy, I'm not sure it makes sense, but for tags, it would definitely make sense for me.
Yeah, for tags, it does make sense. One of the only kind of question marks sort of around it is there's no currently, because the taxonomy is a content type, but the taxonomy part is a code part. There's no way to have actual settings on the taxonomy itself. You can only put settings on the fields, if that makes sense. So we can't actually say this is a tags taxonomy. We can just say in the fields that choose to use it that they're a tags field.
That's okay.
But I think that's generally okay. Yeah, so that's what we have. But yeah, I think we could add display text to it as well.
So what don't we have?
What don't we have right now is adding the new tag.
Okay, then.
And also, what I have done at the moment as well is I've just let it have all the leaves.
Okay.
Because
That's interesting.
and again, because
I like it.
on the taxonomy you can't say that it's a tags taxonomy. There's no way to restrict people down from creating leaves. So I figured it was probably actually just useful to have all the leaves.
Yeah, that makes sense. But the tags should just be flat, so that's okay.
Yeah, but from the perspective of the person,
No, that makes sense. I like it.
better. And if you then choose to convert it to a taxonomy editor, because
That's super powerful because you could have a taxonomy that will serve for tags with different hierarchies, and you just select the leaves. You don't know what hierarchy it's in, but as you pick up tags in the leaves, you implicitly categorize with other kind of tags the content item, and you could use it to say, oh, anything that has this kind of tags or this kind of tags. It just happens that they are in sub tags of the main ones, but you don't see it as an end user. I like it. That would be super useful.
it's just a nice bonus. So it actually becomes quite a nice editor just in general for
Yep.
Yeah.
Like you could have a tags that appear like blue and tall, but they are in different main sections like colors, and under there is blue, red, yellow, whatever, and size, tall, small, grande, whatever. But in the end, you just selected blue and tall, and then you can reuse that knowledge, like, oh, it has a size, oh, it has a color. So that could be super useful.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're very useful for that kind of enumeration, taxonomy term.
So open taxonomy, and that's it. Open taxonomy, and that works. Okay, ship it. Make the open taxonomy, and we merge.
Cool. Okay.
And try the display text thing, because that's what people will want to use when they use a tags field, to just render the name of tags directly in the output, like for blogs. The next later step will be to have a tag cloud, but it will be called a taxonomy cloud, because it will work with any taxonomy. So we can, yeah.
I mean, I think it's really useful that tags fits with taxonomies, because taxonomies are so useful that to get all the benefits. You know?
We'll see when all the cons well, we'll see with usage. Yeah. People complaining that it's too slow or whatever. We'll see.
We'll see. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Awesome, John. Thanks very much. I told you on GitHub for the initiative that you took and to make it progress. That's good. Awesome.
No, it's just nice. It's good to see taxonomies growing a little bit. They're very useful.
We have lots of open issues. We need people to adopt them and fix them. It's great. Awesome. Thank you very much. Questions for Dean? Anyone has questions, comments? All good.
No, looks cool. Looks cool.
Awesome. Which makes me think about another kind of module related to blogs that might be useful, which is a comments module. We know, I think Antoine has made a discuss part, but might be interesting to have a comments module where we own the comments like we do in Orchard One. If people need that, might be useful. All good. Thanks, everyone.
I have actually one more question, sorry, about the taxonomy, because Antoine just reminded me. Antoine asked if we will put it in the blog recipe by default.
Yes.
Shall we?
Yes, you create a tags taxonomy, and with 2 tags, and you assign them to the default blog post, and yes, definitely.
Cool, let's do that. Great.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. See you on Thursday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.